we have is a stimulus package that was put together, and I think, I'm not going to be completely, I might be a billion or two off on my numbers, which may not seem like a lot, but when you're dealing, or it may seem like a whole lot of money, but when you're dealing with hundreds of them, it's not that big of a deal. I think that the original stimulus package was $787 billion with a B dollars. $787 billion they were talking about originally. Now this had to be put into place immediately when Obama took office. He had to do this right away because otherwise we were going to, oh, it was going to be a catastrophe. Oh, the country was going to fall apart and we were going to be completely in shambles. Now, everybody kind of went along with it in Congress and in the Senate. Even though the majority of the people were against it, Congress thought that it was time to do it. We needed to get it done because they were so convinced that they had to do something. Sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something, but if, you know, it's like we got to do something and make it look like we're doing something, so we better pass this really big bill. One of the things that was said in Congress was, where did you come up with this number of $750 billion or $850 billion, whatever it is that they come up with? When they come up with these billion-dollar numbers, they basically just come up with a number. And in the one instance they said, well, we didn't know how much it was going to be originally. We just knew we really needed a really big number. So what we have here is a really big number, 787. That sounds like a big number. Let's just use that. Okay. The CBC now and the CBO have now come out and said that this original $787 billion spending spree that they're wanting to use is actually not going to cost $787 billion. In fact, they've only spent about half of this money so far, about $340 billion, I think is what I remember hearing. But that is not actually accurate either. That money is not actually in the economy. That money has just been earmarked now for projects that have been approved. The funds have not changed hands. There's probably only about $120 billion that have been actually deposited into bank accounts in municipalities and with contractors to actually get something done. So this figure, about half, or about a quarter of the money has actually gotten into the economy in some way, shape, or form. And even that hasn't trickled down to anybody on Main Street, what they're calling, you know, Wall Street and Main Street. Hasn't gotten into any people's pockets in terms of government work. Now, think about this. We're calling this jobs. Most of the jobs that we've been creating so far, that they've been creating with this, have been temporary jobs. They're either up in a week, or they're up in a year, or 2 years, but they have a temporary, finite time that they will be at work, which is kind of goofy when you consider somebody. We're not creating careers, we're just creating stuff for people to do, is what this amounts to. So we got these, well, they spent this, but now the CBC has come out and said, back to my original money trail here, the CBC has come out and said it's going to cost about an initial $84 billion. And we haven't even spent much of it yet, and we haven't even gotten into the whole thing yet, but they're already re-guessing the amount. How long do you think it will be? Do you think it will be by the end of this year, maybe 2010, that it's actually going to be over $1 trillion? Because right now we're talking 800, I think they're saying 860 some billion dollars, basically is what we're up to now. That should be the total amount for all the projects that they have planned to do. Now, what do you think? Well, it's only another $140 billion, and we've only gotten 1 year into this thing, and it's basically a four-year bill. So how long do you think it'll be before we get up to $1 trillion on this original stimulus package? So Obama is saying that basically the stimulus package, without it, we would have all been on the brink. Now, I want you to just sit back and realize something, that what is really going on here in terms of what is happening. Every administration that comes into be, when they're a new administration, they always have a stimulus package or an economic stimulus plan. Reagan didn't do it. He was the only one that I saw that didn't actually do it when he got into office. He didn't have an economic recovery plan to spend money. He actually right away wanted to do tax cuts and spending cuts. The first thing he did was cut spending. But the Clinton did. As soon as Clinton got in, he had an $80 billion economic stimulus plan. Most of the people don't remember that. It didn't pass originally, it didn't pass initially. He had to piecemeal it through, but right away when he got into office, he wanted to start an economic stimulus package, is what he called it originally, within a month after he got into power. So it's a typical playbook maneuver to pay off, to not only pay off some of the people who supported you and helped you, but also to pay off the people that are in your party and the people that it's a big bribe type thing to help keep the support up and keep people, get everybody on board with your program so that they'll all do your thing. Now think about this for a second. They were counting on, they weren't going to do anything. If they had done nothing, no stimulus package whatsoever, things would have gotten things would basically be about where they're at right now anyway. Things wouldn't have gotten really any worse, and they wouldn't really be any better. Maybe they would have been better, I don't know, but they certainly wouldn't have been any worse if they would have done nothing. Every administration, what they were counting on was that the economy wasn't going to get that bad. That's what they basically, this is what was going on behind closed doors. The stimulus package had nothing to do with bringing back the economy or helping the recession whatsoever. The only thing that they cared about was getting that money in place and making it sound like it was an emergency. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. And so they used that kind of thing to pry their agenda through. But what they were really counting on was a natural cycle where the recession would bottom out and come back, and it would never go over 9%. That's what they were saying. It wouldn't go over 8%, I think is what they were saying. And then it did. It went over, way over. So they were just counting on the natural cycle and flow of things to rebound and come back and do its thing. And in the process, it would make it look like they were the ones who did it. Well, they undershot it a little bit as far as how bad they thought it was going to be. So now it will eventually, the American people will come back. We will, pull ourselels up by our bootstraps as long as the government doesn't start lumping too many things on us. If we can stop this train wreck that's about to happen, and we are going to still get into a little bit of a bump here, but it's just an issue of it will recover, and he's going to take credit for it. He takes credit for everything else. So the politicians will take credit for the comeback of the economic situation. I don't think it's going to come back very quickly because the whole entire world is in a bit of a lurch right now. Everything's slow, and I don't think we're ever going to see the kind of comeback that we would expect before. However, this whole issue of whether or not the government stimulus bill really did anything to help us out at all, it has no warrant, in my opinion, whatsoever. It has no credibility. And yet they want to claim responsibility and credit for any kind of recovery. And what they're calling a recovery, there's no recovery. I mean, think about it. It wasn't until 2006 that the House took over, that the progressives on the left got possession of the House. And so it was after 2006. That's when unemployment was less than 5% at that time. And after 2006 was when all the spending and the pressure to spend started happening, and Bush didn't put the brakes on, did not stop it. He did not stop it. The banking industry started having its problems, the housing industry started having its problems, gas prices started going up. Gas was less than $2 a gallon. You look it up. Gas was less than $2 a gallon. Unemployment was less than 5% before 2006, before the 2006 year. That's when Congress came in and took over, and after that we had all the problems. And it's not completely Congress's fault. I know that Bush could have vetoed a lot of things. He could have done a lot of other things. Republicans could have done some things, and I'm not for either side. Both of them have problems in this particular. They both have what do they call it? They both have a fish in this pond or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure there's some. Come up with some kind of saying for your local area. I don't know. So we're basically looking at a situation where politicians are trying to take credit and trying to throw blame and take credit on both sides of the aisle for things that really are nobody's fault or to anybody's credit. Even though behind the whole thing, it's really the bankers that have been screwing around with our economy and doing things to manipulate. And it's not the bankers you see on the forefront, it's the bankers that are behind the bankers. It's the bankers that are behind the bankers that are really pulling the strings and have this whole social, economic puppet thing going on, and they're controlling a lot more than what you realize. But and I'm not saying that there's this big vast conspiracy necessarily, but it's just the issue of the conspiracy is the spirit of greed that is behind this whole thing. There's people in every walk of life that are greedy, and that manifests itself in this, in what looks like a conspiracy against man, because man is against man, nation is against nation, people group against people group. It is a very evil thing that happens when people get greedy and want and don't become generous, and they don't become charitable on their own regard. That's when the government thinks that they have an obligation to be charitable by taking our money away from us at gunpoint and forcing us to be charitable. So that's kind of that's my vlog for the day.